Hi Creatives. So building a thriving art business, how to mix creativity with business management, advice for artists on achieving balance in finance and growth, and how to build your personal brand and expanding reach as an artist. All these questions we are going to discuss today with Amanda. And Amanda, she's an amazing artist, not only an artist actually, but a fantastic entrepreneur. Her art business grew to over £1 million in less than 3 years. It's really fantastic. And she's also a single mom, so she definitely knows how to balance art side of creative side and business. And she has many interesting experience that I'm sure will be helpful for many artists who wants to grow their own not only creativity but business side of life. And I hope now we can make it. To answer all of your questions about growing art business today. I accepted the request that Amanda just, yeah.
Oh, thank you for your patience there. I have no idea what happened. There was just no link to join, and I was like, no. So
Me too.
we
Thank you
made
for
it.
joining. Yeah, thank you for joining.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So actually, I have so many questions because with your experience in art business, it's really so exciting that you are ready to share with all the artists, because these are questions that I hear all the time. That okay, I create, I draw, but what what next? How to earn money with this? And we will go through all this creative process and our business process. But first, please tell a little bit about yourself, your background, maybe about your education, how you have started to create art.
Oh gosh, so it's been I've had a very varied background. So initially, many years ago, I trained as a professional dancer. So I went away from home at the age of 11 and trained. And whilst I was dancing, I always used to draw and sketch dancers in rehearsals. Um, and for many years, absolutely loved art, but just had the mindset that it wasn't possible to make a career out of it. You know, it's a whole starving artist narrative. And so it wasn't possible to do something else to earn money. So obviously had a career as a dancer, you know, opened several businesses and sold one of them, went to uni to do a master's degree in business, but all the time kept pushing aside my art. And that was really the one thing that I desperately wanted to do deep down. So I didn't go to uni to do a fine art degree. I've done lots of short courses working with different mentors. So mostly I'm self-taught, but like I said, that's been underpinned with lots of courses on different skills, you know, figure drawing, fundamentals, colour theory, etc. So yeah, that's really how I came into art. And it was only very recently, well, I say very recently, about 5 years ago, in my last business, where I just thought the need to create art was too great. You know, it starts off as a whisper and then it becomes a shout, and then eventually, if you don't listen to that, you know, it just shouts louder and louder. So about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, sold my business and went into art full time, and it was the best decision I've ever made, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And can you please describe a little bit what your art business consists of? What are the directions? I know that you have a newsletter, the courses, the website and the courses, right? Where you can buy art or learn how to sell art, just so that we can have the view of and
Absolutely.
understand what is your art business about.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So it's changing all the time, and I'm about to go through a very big change at the minute. But initially when I started out, I was making art, obviously, and then because I have such a long background in business, before I came back to my art, I had built and, as I said, sold two successful businesses. Um, so I had a long history, like 20 years plus in business and helping others set up their own. So I thought I'm going to be making art, but I don't want to let go of all the business skills. I really enjoy business as well.
Hi, I hope we can continue our life with Amanda about building a thriving art business, because the previous session just suddenly stopped. So continue it, Amanda. Yeah, please. So sorry, I don't know. I think there's some internet connection, maybe. Yeah, I don't know what is going
This
on.
is just going to be one of those days, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe that's it.
I thought she's
Um,
got bored with me and just switched it off.
No, I'm super excited and interesting, and maybe too excited that it's that internet connection just can't handle um, my excitement. Okay, so you told us you was telling us about that
Yeah.
you had a lot of calls with other artists who wanted to develop their business as artists, and then what?
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, and apologies for the interruption. So yeah, there have always been two sides to the business: my own art sales, and then the business course, helping other artists learn how to succeed in business, because so many artists are taught the skills in terms of techniques and art and though that side of things, but they're told not to sell their work, because if you are commercial, it's somehow a dirty word and it's just meant to magically sell itself. So a lot of artists don't have the skills to be able to do that. So I, as I said, set up the course on the side and my own art practice. And what happened was, over the years, the course grew so quickly that it became huge very, very quickly. The student results were brilliant. And so it grew very quickly to, like I said, an 8-person team. And then my own art practice is separate to that, my own art sales and things. So yeah, lots of different areas to both sides of the business. So really, there's like the creation and the marketing side of two businesses simultaneously.
Wow.
I know.
How do you manage all of that?
It's definitely tricky, and one big decision I've made lately is to restructure how I'm running the courses, and instead of them running all the time, I'm just going to run my signature program once a year for 10 weeks, and then the rest of the time I'll be in the studio focusing on my own art practice and business, because the bigger the course got and the more it was available all the time, the less time I had in the studio. And this is very poignant at the minute with the balance that we're talking about for
Hmm.
artists and, mixing the two sides.
Hmm. And do you host your courses live? Are there Zoom calls or something like that?
Yeah, so how it currently runs, my main program, the
Hmm.
signature one, and there's one last enrollment between now and the 5th of January. This is the last enrollment until 2026. But how this one runs is it's a 6-month signature program. It's all of the videos, the recordings, the step-by-step on branding, photography, websites, email, marketing, everything from start to finish. And we have a community where the students get their questions answered 6 days a week, and also monthly live Zoom calls with myself. So it's coaching, community, and calls.
Yeah, that definitely needs a lot of time and your attention to be focused on the program and students.
It does.
Also, yeah. Now you have the team who is helping you, right?
Mhm.
And when you already just started your art business, were you doing everything alone, or did you maybe have an assistant or someone who helped you from?
No, at first I started alone, like everybody does, and at the time it was a real juggle because at the time I still had my other business. It was Pilates and yoga studios. I was a single mum at the time. I'm not anymore. Um, so I was trying to run that business, start a new one, do it all myself, and obviously take care of the children. So it was juggling quite a lot of balls. And then as things got busier, I took on, I think the first person I hired was a Facebook ads manager to help me promote it. And then an assistant, and yeah, it grew from there.
Mm-hmm. And if we delve deeper in that period of time when you just started your own art business,
Mm-hmm.
can you share with us what were your first steps, first main decisions, which are really essential in the very first stage of building your art business?
Oh, that's a great question. Gosh, and it feels like it was so far back. Obviously, because I was just starting out, one of the first things I wanted to get set up because it was easiest for me was this business course, 6 weeks course. And then I thought once I built it, I can have it pre-recorded and it will sell continuously in the background whilst I make art. Um, and like I said, that was going to be very, very quick for me to establish. But I think if it was anybody else, I think one of the most important things is to decide what you really want to focus on first, because as artists we can often do too many things at once, and we're obviously multi-passionate and we have all these ideas. But I think, what is the one thing that you want to start with, and is it that's the easiest for you to get to market? Because so many of us have skills, and actually we have, for example, if we have sketches and originals in the studio or at home, one of the easiest ways to get started would just be to focus on selling those rather than setting up a whole print sales funnel or workshops. So for me, the easiest thing for me to get to market was the business course that was going to be evergreen. Yeah, and then to go in the studio and just focus on making art. Actually, I didn't have a studio at the time. It was my kitchen table. Yeah, so
Mhm.
the kitchen table was just covered in art materials.
Yeah, but even to make an evergreen course,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do many different stages of that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just remember that I subscribed, started following you maybe a year ago or something like that. First, I saw your target in target advertisement. Then I started following you on Instagram, and for some, there was a video or something that I signed up for a newsletter, and then I started to receiving your newsletters with this really helpful video
Mm-hmm.
on something about art. Sorry, I don't
Oh,
remember. It
it's
was
fine.
really very long time ago. But anyway, so there is social media, special this Facebook and Instagram advertisement on social media, and
Mm-hmm.
newsletter, which is a different part. All these newsletter things. Then the video, which is sharing some helpful information and inviting you to the main course.
Yeah.
So it's really a lot. And besides all that, you create art. You're drawing, you're
Fine.
painting all these pictures and on canvases, very beautiful art that you sell directly to clients. So if we divide it into many, many pieces, um, it's really a lot of work and you were alone. So maybe you can tell us that, okay, I spend on newsletters only 10% of my time, and 50% of my day I was painting and filming how painting. I don't know, anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
To
absolutely. So I think that the really important thing to get across is that huge ecosystem that I've got now wasn't like that in the beginning. It was really simple. And I think so many of us start a new project and we think we need all of these bells and whistles and all of these components, all these different parts of the jigsaw to get started. And actually we just need one piece. So yes, it's huge now, and I have like omnipresence on different platforms and webinars and automated email systems and all those things. But at first, it was just a video, a workshop telling people about the course, and then a series of emails to help people decide if it was the right purchase for them. And then it grew as it got more complex. But now what I try to do, what I try to advise the other artists in my program to do, is ideally split your time 50-50 between creating and business, because so many of us think that we just make art every day of the week and somehow it's just going to sell itself. But that's not the case. As you know, you've got a really successful business, beautiful artwork as well. You have to spend the time getting it out to market, letting people know what you do, you know, why they might be interested in it. So I think 50-50 is a nice balance, because there, as you know, there's website, there's photography, there's actual marketing itself. And I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about with the students is helping them set up systems that take care of a lot of the sales and marketing for them, so that behind the scenes, they've got a whole marketing engine that's working 24/7 whilst they're then creating in the studio.
Mhm. If you can talk a little bit more about this part where artists who are listening to us now, they maybe don't even have a website or maybe a very simple one. What are the first steps that they should take to, what should they do to start selling their artworks, not only via DMs if somebody contacted them on Instagram, but how else just the simplest first steps to start
Yeah,
sell your art.
absolutely. So if you're right at the beginning and you have artwork and you don't have a website yet, or like you said, it's very simple, start connecting with people on social media. Obviously, that's an easy way to engage, and really think about your customers, what they want to hear and see and feel from you in order to connect with your artwork. So show them, you know, behind the scenes, what you're working on, what inspires you, why you make the work you do, you know, get them involved in the whole process. So that's social media. Also, in terms of organically, you can partner with other businesses. So say, for example, I'm an artist and I have 100 followers, and I can, you know, there's a business that's complementary to mine but not competitive per se, then I can approach them and either do a pop-up event in their store or do a joint live like this, a promotion or an exhibition where we're joining forces. There are all sorts of ways you can collaborate with either other artists or other types of businesses that still complement yours, that have your ideal customer, to get you out in front of much bigger audiences. So an example would be, let's say I did pet portraits. If I collaborated with a pet store and they have an audience of 5,000 people, and I offer to do either an in-store painting session or a free, you know, download or a gift for their customers, any kind of collaboration like that where I'm providing value and something different is going to attract the attention of their customers and put me in front of their audience. So automatically, I'm now visible in front of 5,000 more people. And if you do one thing like that every month or every quarter, just baby steps consistently, you'll soon find that growth happens quite naturally.
Yeah, that's wonderful example. Thank you very much for
You're
sharing.
welcome.
Um, Also, another question that artists, beginner artists, often have is how do you price your art, your prints or canvases that you sell?
Yeah, it's so tricky at first because pricing is kind of almost arbitrary. I mean, obviously with prints, there's a cost price. So it's easier. You can use a multiplier for prints, and that makes sure you're profitable, obviously, because you've got the cost of your product and the fulfillment and shipping, etc. But with originals, it's harder. You know, some people use a square inch method, other people use a time and materials method. Um, and I prefer to use like an average linear system. But I think a lot of the mistake a lot of artists make when pricing their work is they undervalue it for start, definitely in the beginning, because they think if I price myself really cheaply, I'll sell more. And that's not always the case, because when we see a product in a supermarket, for example, and you see two next to each other and one is very cheap and the other one is more expensive, you automatically make a judgment about quality. So I think undervaluing yourself isn't always the right thing to do. Having said that, you can't price yourself too high to begin with, because you price yourself out of the market. So I think it's finding a price that you are happy with, parting with the artwork and the customer sees as a good exchange, and not trying to say, oh, well, there are other artists on Etsy who are selling it for this much less, therefore I've got to match their prices, because it's a race to the bottom. So it's so difficult to put a price on things, because of mediums as well, oils and watercolors and sizes. But take a look around at other artists, get a feel for it, but don't be guided and directed by that. Have a look at your experience. Have a look at how desirable your artwork is. You know, if you post it on Facebook and Instagram and friends and family are like, oh my gosh, can I buy this? You know, is it for sale? Then the demand is there. So perhaps you can just nudge up your prices. But I remember my first original was about 60 by 60. And a friend of mine said, oh, I really want to buy that. You know, posted it on Facebook just for fun, really. And I said to her, you know, is £95 okay? So I was asking her, is it okay to charge you less than £100 for this original artwork? And she was, yeah, yeah, I'm more than happy with that. Give it to me. And so it's a lot about confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just building up as you start to sell more, you know, you can have the confidence to increase your prices.
Yeah, I think it's really good to hear from experienced artists who now sell their work really in a high price, to hear these stories that you started also from some over than £100 for an original.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every artist started from the beginning.
Yeah.
It looks like we sometimes forget this. Scrolling on Instagram, and also it would be very interesting to know if you can share your experience in working with or maybe exploring and testing some print-on-demand platforms, as it's an accessible way to start selling your prints on different objects, goodies. So if you have any experience in that, it would be very interesting to know.
Yeah, lots. It's one of the main aspects of my program, because it forms the base income stream that's like a passive recurring stream that covers all of your basic costs. So that's the main income stream I get artists started off with. So in terms of print on demand, people think that print on demand is cheap, and it's only cheap if it's done cheaply. Because at the end of the day, it's a system, it's a service, and you can do any service cheaply or you can do it expensively. So there are different print on demand companies that will serve different markets. So if you are low price and high volume, and you want your artwork on things like mobile phone covers or notebooks or posters, then you would use a different print on demand company for that. For example, you know, you've got, I think Printful and Printify have just merged potentially. They've been, one of them bought out the other. So they're an entry level print on demand company. You've got your mid-range, something, for example, like Prodigy, who are great and do fine art prints as well as all the other products. And then you have the high-end companies as well that, you know, very high quality papers, embossed signatures, colour matching, branded packaging, etc. So it's really choosing, because people always say to me, who's the best print on demand company? And it's impossible to answer, because it's like, well, what are your requirements? Do you want paper prints? Do you want canvas prints? Do you want interior products? Do you want your prints framed? Because and where in the world do you want to fulfill? Because some companies, for example, Creative Hub, brilliant paper prints, gorgeous, do limited edition, but they don't do canvas prints and their framing is quite expensive. They have 2 fulfillment centres, so some artists they might not be right for, whereas Prodigy, middle to high end, but mostly middle, have fulfillment centres all over the world. They offer framing, canvases, paper, etc. But for some artists, Prodigy don't feel high end enough. So you have to start with your requirements, and then find the print on demand supplier that suits you best.
Yeah, it sounds wise. Could you please share your personal favorites, a couple of them who ship worldwide?
Yeah, so I mentioned Prodigy, Prodigi. They are mid-range. Fulfillment globally. There's another company called Jondo, Jondo, again another global company. So they if you're looking for mid-range, I would start with those 2.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Actually, I'm considering if you can give an advice for me personally, maybe it will be helpful for someone else. Recently, I saw this company Gelato that also have a worldwide delivery. Have you met them? Did you try anything like
Yeah,
that?
and I've spoken with them a couple of times. They're also great. Again, some students love them, some students prefer other. It's very personal. So what I would always say is, speak to them, chat to them, support, and then order a test sample, because you'll get a feel for how fast, how responsive they are in terms of support, what the sample comes delivered like. Is it just shoved in a tube? Is it wrapped beautifully? Did it take ages to arrive? Were customer support helpful or not so? Oops, can hear my cat. And so you can make a decision then based on your experience. But yeah, Gelato are another great company. Yeah.
Is it a low or middle segment?
It's very similar to Jondo and Jondo and Prodigy, kind of middle. Yeah. I think whenever you get a company like that is global, and can cope with a very high volume turnover, they're never going to be, in my opinion, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you can get ultra high end massive global companies, because of the attention to detail that goes into the very high end, which is what you're paying for. The color matching, the scanning, the branded tissue, the embossed signatures, that personal note and packaging. It's really tricky to do that on a global scale at high volume. So
Also, I think thank you very much. Also, I think it would be helpful to our listeners, maybe if you can recommend some platforms which are good for artists who want to sell their artworks. Your top 3, maybe.
For me, it's an absolute no-brainer. In terms of website, it's Shopify hands down for me, because I've built, oh crikey, I'm showing my age now. I've been building websites since 2005, GoDaddy, Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, all of them. And what I found is that you get to a certain stage with them and they won't let you do what you need to do next for the level of growth. And it's so frustrating when you put all your time and energy into something and then it's limiting you and you're having to work within its parameters. So Shopify is the only platform that is, it will literally drive the growth and sales of your business, because it's got apps for everything. If you have an idea, it's already got 15 apps that can do it for you, that you just plug in and it's instant. And they also have beautiful themes. The free themes are quite basic, but then plenty to get you started. But the paid themes are just exquisite, and you can make really stunning websites with them.
Yeah, thank you very much. I
You're welcome.
also very curious about your creative process when you create art. Can you walk us through this? When you do you create a studio? What materials do you use mostly? What inspires you and all these things?
No, do you know what? I got goosebumps then when you talked about the practice, because I can feel what's coming in the business. I've created a lot more space now for my practice from January. And like every time I think about it, my whole body just goes into like this state of excitement. So creative practice, usually I think inspired by the fact that I was a dancer many moons ago. A lot of my art is about energy and emotion and movement and expression. So it's quite gestural, it's loose, it's free. So when I begin, usually, and I like working big, I've started to realize I love working really big. I start with the canvas and literally just, I don't want to say throw paint because I don't throw it, but I just have loads of fun putting down layers, like pouring, dragging, lifting it back off with tissue, just seeing what happens, really playing around with the materials. And then usually it gets to a middle stage, as we all know, where it's just awful. And it's a hot mess. There's loads of stuff going on and too much going on. So then start the process of editing it to say, okay, what do I want to draw the viewer's eyes to primarily? And let me edit other bits back, so knock them back so that the main focus stands out and there's a real story and some depth to the piece. And then the final stage, usually I have to go away between the stages, is to come back and say where, and this is just a personal thing, where in the painting is it bugging me? Is there something that looks unresolved or unfinished or is just not congruent with the rest in terms of composition or values or anything like that, and then just go in and do those final details. So the middle stage I find frustrating, but I'm used to it now, and I'm just like, this is that horrible stage where you kind of almost throw down the tools and think, I've ruined it, there's no point in this. But as soon as you let go and go, I've ruined it, so it can't possibly get any worse, let me be free, that's when all the magic happens. And I love that bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you schedule the time when you create, or is it more spontaneous, or do maybe just block some time in your calendar? Okay, from 3 to 6, I just paint something.
Yeah. So I've been trying desperately over the last few years to make more time for a consistent routine, and it just hasn't happened. Hence the recent decision. But no, I don't use sketchbooks as much as I feel I ought to. And I don't like those shoulds and things. But that's one thing I definitely want to start doing from January. Have a period of playing for about 2 or 3 months where I'm sketchbooks and papers, and not with a view to selling anything or creating a beautiful finished collection, just for my own purpose. But no, it tends to be more spontaneous. I might see a color palette, out on a walk in nature and think, oh God, I love how that aqua blue contrasts against that coral red. And then I'm itching to get to the studio to play around with that palette. But then usually I just mix a palette up and just start to play and just see what happens.
Oh, there's a question in the comments. How old are your children now, Amanda? Does that impact how you schedule time for art?
It does, and I was quite fortunate in the respect that, gosh, it was what, trying to think back, it was 2019 when I went back to an art class. Yeah, and 2021 when I sold the business and went full time into it. So my children, gosh, My youngest now is 15 and the eldest is 22. So they're not children anymore. So youngest at the time was about 10. Eldest, what, 17, 18-ish, something like that. So yeah, it's not like I had toddlers. That would be tricky. My first business, I had toddler. My eldest was a toddler, and the second business, I had the two children. So I definitely know what it's like to juggle business and children. But for my art practice, they were older. And I see and admire artists all the time, and they're painting in the studio and they've got the baby on the hip and they're kind of and I think, wow, hats off to you. Or, the toddler's got crayons and they're on the floor whilst mum or dad is creating a piece on the wall. I just think that must be such an amazing environment for a child to grow up in.
Yeah.
Yeah, teenagers to be tricky too, Patrina. Yeah, for sure.
My another question is about how to build your personal brand as an artist. Is there any difference between you're an artist? Okay, I create art like this. I have a distinctive artistic style, but what does it mean to build a personal brand as an artist?
Mhm.
And how to grow it, how it influences on your sales, or is there any connection?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a strong connection, but I think sometimes it can get misinterpreted that people think they have to sell themselves as opposed to their art. And I think primarily the art is first, but the story behind it, i.e. you, and what drives you is equally important. So if you, I'm probably trying to use an example, it's better. If you see a piece of artwork and you don't know the artist behind it, you don't know the story behind it, you may love it, but it's a visual and a surface level. But quite often, if you then hear the story behind the piece and what the artist is seeking to evoke and their backstory, all of a sudden all those extra layers just make that piece take on a completely different light, and that love that you had for it is deepened several layers. So I think branding can definitely help sell artwork because people feel more connected with the story and the meaning, but also it can help you grow as an artist and your brand, because if you have something that's recognizable and it has your signature, it's much easier for people to say, that's the artist who creates XYZ, and talk to their friends and share it, and then other people come on board. But if you don't have a brand and what you do is quite confusing and mixed and it's a bit all over the place, number one, customers tend not to gravitate to it because it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel like they know what to expect from you. And the same with galleries and collectors. And so if they were trying to describe you to somebody else, they'd be like, well, she does a bit of this and a bit of that, and it sounds a bit woolly and vague. So I think branding works on two sides for sure.
Yes, I agree with you. Another question that I often receive personally, it's a question about motivation. So would love to hear your answer. What helps you to stay motivated, especially as you have so many different directions to where you should develop your business and art and really manage many tasks simultaneously? What helps you to be motivated and move forward?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask
Mm.
this of, because I think with having the dance training background, it was really disciplined. We trained for 10 hours a day, and there was no mercy. It was just get on with it and get it done. So I have that kind of ethos and background anyway, which has been a huge help. But I think for most people, and still as well for myself, it's about knowing what you are really passionate about. Because if you're creating art that you think will sell, but your heart isn't in it, because it's not really the style of art you want to be doing, it's hard to stay motivated, because things get tough. Even if you love what you do, there are always days or weeks or months when things are just tough, they're difficult. And if your heart isn't in it in the first place, that's when it's really easy to lose your mojo. But I think if you are doing the kind of work that you would do anyway, even if you weren't being paid for it, because you wake up and you're like, oh, today's exciting because I get to do this and play with that and see what happens when I put these layers together, that helps you to stay motivated for definite. But in those times when even that doesn't work, to be honest, my go-to is step away from the business altogether, step away from art, from the pieces, go for a walk, just get away into nature, or put on a really, really good tune, and just dance like nobody's watching and just let all that kind of frustration and energy go. Yeah, so I'm glad nobody sees that part, but yeah, we say it works wonders for just getting rid of all that stuck energy.
Yeah, I love so much your answer. Totally agree with everything you just said. Just maybe like a summary. So artists, beginner artists who are listening to this live and they create art, they love what they do, love what they do, and have this passion, maybe have some sales. What are the top 3 tips that you can give them to take the next step? We already, of course, talked about this during this live, but if
Yeah,
you can give just
summarize it.
a summary, yeah.
Okay, so top 3 tips. Oh gosh, I'll try and summarize that off the top. So my first tip will be to focus on connections rather than sales, because I think if you go into things thinking I want to sell this and I want to sell this and sell that to this person, you can feel that energy. Whereas if you want to connect with people and help them find the piece that's right for them, and just connect in terms of other people that share the same values and passions and joy. So if my passion is colour or it's freedom, connect with other people that love colour and freedom. So that would be step one, connections, in person, online, reaching out to people, starting new relationships. That's definitely one. Number 2 would be consistency. So just baby steps. You don't have to achieve everything in day one. Do one thing each day, and by the end of it sounds like a cliche, but by the end of the year, you've done 365 small actions that take you closer to your goal. And it's enjoyable, you don't burn out, and the results are, it's a compound effect. So I think consistency is important. And then the last thing for me would be systems, like systemizing your sales and marketing so that it doesn't drown out the creativity. Because if you are having to go out and find every sale, then you'll spend 90% of your time on selling and marketing and 5% on creating. But if you've got systems in the background that work for you, that show your work to thousands of potential collectors every month, bring them to your website, convert a certain percentage onto your email list, so that's building all the time, and then a percentage of those buy, all of that takes place in the background whilst you then have time to create. Now, of course, that needs managing, but it's nowhere near the level of effort that is required to go out and chase individual sales. And also, once you have that system working, you can scale it. So you can turn up the volume and you can sell 100 prints in a day, or 1,000 prints in a month, and you can still cope with that because you're not having to generate that work and those connections and those sales. So yeah, make connections with people, with your buyers and with other businesses that can help you grow each other. Stay consistent with your actions and just baby steps. Don't beat yourself up because you haven't done enough. Even the tiniest action is enough. And then try to systemize your sales and marketing, because it will, as early on as possible, because then you'll be free to grow as an artist and you don't have to focus too much on the sales and marketing side.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Lastly, looking back, what would you tell your younger self when you just started your artistic journey?
I would say, and this is easier said than done, block out the voices that tell you something can't be done, and listen to that voice that's really deep down inside that says, this is the thing I really want to do, before the but comes in, oh, you can't do it because of this, or how about that. Listen to that voice and stay so laser focused on it every day, and don't allow the negative voices to come in and put you off and derail you, or persuade you to do something like a watered down version of it. Yeah, on that note, actually, and something your listeners might be interested in, there's a book by a neuroscientist called Dr. James Doty, and it is called, I think it's called Mind Magic. And for me, that's one of the things I would have taken hold of sooner in my mind, to have that laser focused vision and unwavering confidence that if I want to create this business and this particular type of art, I can do it. I just need to take the steps, follow the actions, show up, but be committed to it. It's not going to happen overnight, but keep hold of that mindset that makes it happen so much faster.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Amanda. It was so interesting and exciting to listen to your story, and thank you so much for all the advices and experiences that you shared with us, and telling the direct platforms and all these things. I'm sure this life will be helpful for many artists, and I hope they take these steps and start going and forward and grow as art in our business. Thank you so much.
Honestly, in my opinion, there is no better business out there than the one that your soul craves to do, and we're so lucky as artists to get the chance to do that. So I think not wasting any time. And again, thank you for having me. Sorry about the interruptions at the beginning with Instagram, but we got there in the end, and it's been really lovely talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a big pleasure for me. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
Bye everyone.